Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Valentine's Day, where it all came from, and of course, we're going to talk about the ultimate love story, which of course came from ancient Greece, Greek mythology. Where else could it have possibly come from? Of course, ancient Greece. Eros and Psyche. Welcome to Not Another Greek History Podcast, the podcast that aims to be exactly what it says. I'm your host, Onoufios Dovlepis, and together we'll discover the not so frequently told stories of Greece's history that will change the way you view things forever. The genesis of Valentine's Day. We have to go back to antiquity, I would say towards the end of antiquity, not classical Greece. That would be the Roman festival of Lupercalia, which was observed around February 13th to 15th. Lupercalia was a visceral, bloody affair dedicated to Lupercus, the god of fertility and protector of shepherds, and Faunus as well, the god of the forest. The festival's central myth involved the Lupercal cave on the Palatine Hill, where legend held that the she-wolf had nursed the founders of Rome, Remus and Romulus. Another fun-loving myth, which was very typical of the very civilized Romans who loved a good bloody show. The rituals performed were designed to ensure agricultural and human fertility during a time of year associated, of course, with the transition toward spring. The priests would sacrifice goats and dogs, animals chosen for their perceived sexual vigor and protective instincts, and then smear the blood onto the foreheads of two young men. I love it. This blood was subsequently wiped off with wool dipped in milk. Of course, why not? A symbolic act that some scholars interpret as the cleansing of sacrificial violence through the nurturing symbol of infancy. The most notable aspect of the festival involved the februa, or thongs, made from the skins of the sacrificed goats. Thongs, yes, you heard right. The priests, often naked or near naked, it's getting even better. They were near naked to symbolize a return to a primal state. They would run through the city, striking women with these thongs. This symbolic beating was welcomed by women. I don't know who says that, but okay. Let's play along. It was welcomed by women as it was believed to promote fertility and ease the pains of childbirth. If any woman listening has been beaten by a thong, let us know how that worked for you. While Lupercalia emphasized the collective need for procreation, Valentine's Day eventually refocused on the individual experience of love. The etymology of the month itself, February, derives from these February thongs, grounding our modern calendar in a ritual of purification and fecundity. February 14th, as a day of religious significance, starts in the late 5th century when Pope Gelasius I officially abolishes Lupercalia and dedicates the date to the martyrdom of Saint Valentine. Of course, shifts like this were really typical during the early Christian centuries. However, the identity of Saint Valentine remains shrouded in ambiguity, with records and sources suggesting that at least three different martyrs bearing the same name. The most prominent candidate is a Roman priest executed around 270 AD under Emperor Claudius II. According to legend, Claudius had banned marriages for young men, believing that single soldiers were more focused and effective on the battlefield than those who were preoccupied with families. Valentine defied this decree, performing secret marriages until his capture and eventual beheading on February 14th. This narrative frames Valentine as romantic at heart, a figure who prioritized the sanctity of the marital bond over the mandates of the state. It is essential to note that Valentine's Day was not fully associated with romantic love until the High Middle Ages, which indicates that the saint's role as a patron of lovers was a latter literary development rather than an early theological one. The transition from a day of martyrdom to celebration of love was primarily driven by the literary innovations of the 14th century, specifically within the circle of Geoffrey Chaucer. To be honest, literary for me is kind of difficult. I hope I got it. Chaucer is frequently credited with being the first to link the feast of Saint Valentine with the mating of birds in his work The Parliament of Fowls. Lexicon of the Heart, precision in ancient Greek versus modern English. A significant challenge in modern discourse regarding romance is vocabulary, where English uses a single word love to describe everything from a preference for a specific food to a lifelong commitment to a spouse. The Greeks utilized and still use distinct words. The primary loves, Eros, Philia, and Agape. Eros represented intense, romantic, passionate, and sexual desire. It was named after the god who was often depicted as a limb loosener and a crawling beast, reflecting the visceral, physical collapse caused by attraction, and it's a masculine word like the god himself. Crucially, the Greeks did not view Eros as an unmitigated positive, they feared it as a form of madness that caused a loss of control and irrational behavior. According to some myths, Eros came from chaos, and existed before the famous 12 gods. In other myths, he is the son of Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, and her lover, Ares, the god of war. Keep in mind, Aphrodite was married. She was a married woman to Hephaestus, the god of fire, which didn't really work. So she cheated on him with his brother, the god of war, Ares. So when love and war got together, then the mighty god of falling in love was born, Eros. Then we have philia, friendship, which was valued by thinkers like Aristotle far more than the base sexuality of Eros. From the word philia, we get compound words such as philosophy. Sophia is the word wisdom. Philosophy, the love of wisdom, love of learning. Philharmonic, the love of harmony. Philadelphia, the love of your brother. Adelphos is the word brother. Or even in the end of a word, not just in the beginning, like philosophy. So we get pedophilia, which is the love of children, to love children, obviously in this case in a very weird, negative way. So philia is the word for friendship, as we said, but also from it we get phili. Phili is the word kiss. Philia was the love that developed between brothers in arms on the battlefield, or companions seeking a higher level of understanding of the self and the world. Plato famously argued that the best kind of friendship is that which lovers have for each other, a philia born out of Eros that transforms a lust for possession into a shared impulse or philosophy. Some pretty heavy stuff here. From this word, we also get philautia, or self-love. Philo we have in the beginning, and then imagine that this is spelled with A-U-T-I-A, aftia. In English, though, that kind of sounds like auto, like philotia, because afto and afto is the word for self, hence the word automatic, something which works by itself, or autism, which has to do with the self. So philautia is the love for yourself. Aristotle categorized it into two types. An unhealthy variety, which is associated with narcissism, and a healthy version that enhances one's capacity to love others. Narcissism, of course, got its name from the young man called Narcissus, who fell in love with his own reflection and drowned trying to approach it. What a douche. I mean, come on, dude. At least be able to swim. And what great lessons we actually get from all these myths, right? He drowned trying to love his own reflection, which was impossible. Then we have agape, which represents selfless. So here in this case, you lose the self part. Very interesting. Selfless, unconditional love, often associated with divine love or the love of God for humanity. Unlike Eros or Philia, which depend on the qualities of the beloved, agape requires no payment or favor in response. It is a love freely given even to strangers or enemies. It is the main word for love in Greek. So when you say, I love you, either to your partner or to your parents or children, that is the word. So when we say I love you in Greek, it is sagapo. Sa being the word se, to you. Sagapo. The psyche of desire, Eros and Psyche. While Saint Valentine provides the historical anchor for the holiday, the myth of Eros and Psyche, as you say in English, offers the psychological depth necessary to understand the internal dynamics of love. First recorded in full by Apuleius in the 2nd century AD within Metamorphoses. It's just a detail for you now. You say metamorphosis in English. That means transformation, of course, in Greek. That is exactly how we say it, metamorphosis. But the plural is the exact same word with a different stress on the syllables. Singular, metamorphosis, so it's mo, and then the plural is metamorphosis, so it goes on the fo. And of course, it has the word morphe, which is the word shape. So you say morph, morphine, morphing, and so on. So that is a tale, which is an allegory of the human soul. The psyche, psyche, is how we say it in Greek. The PS is pronounced in Greek as ps. It's PS, ps. It's not s. And it undergoes a series of trials to achieve union with divine desire. That would be Eros. Psyche, a mortal princess of such extraordinary beauty that she incited the jealousy of Aphrodite herself. Enraged, Aphrodite commanded Eros to make Psyche fall in love with a hideous creature. Instead, Eros fell in love with her and carried her away to a hidden palace where he visited her only in the dark, forbidding her from seeing his face. In the beginning, Psyche lives in a dream life within a palace. This stage represents the early idealized phase of romantic love where the partner is not seen for who they are, but is instead a vessel for projection. The fall occurs when Psyche, spurred by the envy of her sisters, lights a lamp to see her husband. Seeing the beautiful god of love instead of a monster, a drop of hot oil, because it was an oil lamp, falls from her lamp, scalding Eros and causing him to flee. By bringing light to the relationship, Psyche shatters the unconscious bond and enters the individuation path. That is some really deep shit here, guys. But I'm getting some serious vibes of Beauty and the Beast. The 4 tasks, the labor of the soul. To regain her lover, Psyche must submit to Aphrodite, who imposes 4 impossible tasks. These tasks are analyzed as milestones of development for the maturing Psyche, the Psyche. Keep in mind, the gods were really, really imaginative. So here it goes. Psyche must sort a massive mound of different grains by nightfall, but she gets help from ants, and this is how she learns the necessity of discrimination, the ability to categorize and evaluate the chaotic influx of thoughts and emotions. That is the meaning behind the task, which was to sort the seeds. Then we get the golden fleece. Okay, they were imaginative, but the golden fleece is kind of common. They kind of ran out of ideas at some point. She must gather wool from sun-grazed rams. Following the advice of a reed, she waits until the rams sleep and collects the wool snagged on bushes. This represents the integration of patience and soft power over aggressive confrontation. Then we get to the water of the Styx. She's tasked with filling a flask from the dangerous, unreachable source of the river Styx. Held by an eagle, she succeeds, symbolizing the need for perspective and the ability to grasp higher spiritual truths. And then the beauty box of Persephone. Psyche must descend into the underworld to bring back a portion of beauty from the queen of the dead, Persephone, wife of Hades. This task represents the soul's encounter with the shadow and the recognition of mortality. The conclusion of the myth, Psyche's elevation to goddesshood and her formal marriage to Eros, because eventually she, of course, makes it and she marries Eros, results in the birth of their daughter, Hedone. That would be where the word hedonism comes from, pleasure. This union signifies the completion of the soul's journey, Love is no longer a blind, possessing force. It's not just Eros, nor is the soul a passive, frightened mortal like Psyche. They become equals. I hope you're still with me after all of this. Because now we're going to get to something really, really mind blowing: the platonic shadow, the other half. The modern obsession with finding a soulmate who completes us is almost entirely derived from a single passage from the Symposium, that is a work written by Plato, like Platon, we say in Greek, with an N, hence the word platonic with an N. Symposium means to drink together, so that would be a drinking party. But of course, the men never got drunk during that party, so they could talk about philosophy and stuff like that. Hence the word symposium that we use for conferences. In this dialogue, because it was practically a play, the famous comedic playwright Aristophanes, who lived in Athens during the peak of democracy in the 5th century BC, presents a mythic origin of humanity to explain the intensity of romantic longing. Before I tell you what Aristophanes says in the dialogue written by Plato, keep in mind that Plato is ingenious because he's using known people. He's using actually a playwright as a character in a play. So according to Aristophanes, humans were originally spherical beings with 4 arms, 4 legs, and 2 faces looking in opposite directions. These beings were so powerful and ambitious that they threatened the gods. In response, Zeus cut them in half to weaken them. Ever since this slicing, each human half has wandered the earth in a state of despair and longing, seeking its other half to heal the wound of human nature. This myth establishes the foundational deficit model of love that dominates modern media. It suggests that individuals are fundamentally broken until they find the one. Contrastingly, the great philosopher of the 5th century BC, Socrates, as presented by Plato, offered the ladder of love. He argued that love should not be about finding a mirror image of oneself to cure loneliness, but should instead be a tool for spiritual and intellectual ascent. In this view, one starts by loving the beauty of a single body, then moves to loving the beauty of all bodies, then the beauty of souls, laws, and institutions, finally reaching the vision of beauty itself. The ultimate goal of love is not the partner. The heart and the curb. The visual vocabulary of Valentine's Day, the heart shape, and the winged infant further illustrates the synthesis of disparate historical influences. Both symbols have roots in ancient Greece that were later adapted by Roman and Christian cultures. The evolution of Cupid, the chubby baby known as Cupid, is another version of the Greek god Eros. In early Greek art and sculpture, Eros was depicted as a slender, athletic, and often formidable young man with angel wings, reflecting the dangerous and limb-loosening nature of passion, and not as a baby. Unfortunately, though, nowadays everyone knows the god of falling in love as Cupid and not as Eros, where the word erotic comes from. Erotica comes from that. It was during the Hellenistic period, which means from the 4th century BC onwards, that his image began to soften into the pinchable infant that we recognize today. A Hellenistic depiction of Eros as a baby with wings we have, by the way, in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, and that would be practically the last statue that you see of ancient Greece independent before it was occupied by the Romans. And that would be just a few rooms before you exit the National Archaeological Museum. So that is a statue where you have Aphrodite who's being harassed by Pan, who's half good, and between them, actually hovering above them, we have Eros trying to help out his mom. It is the only, to be honest, the only funny statue that we have in the entire museum. It's really worth checking out. This transformation represents a cultural shift in the perception of desire from a destructive cosmic force. We said the Greeks believed that Eros existed before the world was created. So from this cosmic force, we get to a harmless commercial mascot, practically. The legend of Cupid's bow and arrow is not a modern marketing creation. Of course, it is found in ancient art. Eros was supposed to wound Psyche with his arrow, but he wounded himself instead. And then we get to the heart shape. That is a mystery, right? Where did the heart symbol actually originate from? Because it looks nothing like the actual human heart. We have a lot of proposed origins. Silphium seed pods. In the 5th century BC, the Greek colony of Kyrene, that would be Cyrene, grew really wealthy by exporting silphium, a plant used as an aphrodisiac, which comes, of course, from the name of his mother, Aphrodite. And it was a highly effective form of birth control as well. The seed pods of this plant were heart-shaped and appeared on Cyrenian coins, linking the shape to sexual pleasure and its management. Another candidate is ivy leaves. Ivy was a symbol of fidelity in the ancient world because it clings and stays green. Stylized ivy leaves in Greek art, often associated with Dionysus, the god of wine, the god of intense emotion, resemble the modern heart shape. And then, medieval anatomy. Early medieval artists, following the anatomical descriptions of Aristotle, for example, they believed the heart had 3 chambers and a central indentation. So it was initially depicted as a pine cone held upside down. By the 14th century, the scalloped top emerged in manuscripts, eventually evolving into the symmetrical icon used on playing cards in the 15th century. Modern relational dynamics. Dating apps that we use a lot nowadays, while offering a vast lottery, let's say, of potential partners, often prioritize playful interaction and eros, the physical attraction, over the more stable form of philia and eventually agape, love. As the Greek poetess Sappho famously described love some 2600 years ago, love is bittersweet and irresistible, a limb loosener, as we said, that rattles the soul like a mountain wind assaulting an oak. The historical trajectory of Valentine's Day suggests that humans have always sought to manage the too muchness of desire through ritual and language. From the blood-soaked thongs of Lupercalia, I know you had missed the thongs, I know I did, to handwritten 15th century poems, we create frameworks to contain a force that would otherwise consume us. By collapsing the nuances of eros, philia, and agape into a single term, we lose the ability to navigate the different seasons of a relationship. Ultimately, the myth of Eros and Psyche teaches that love is an initiation. If you made it this far, I saved the best for last. Where can you see relics of Saint Valentine? You can simply go to the Catholic Church of Saint Francis and Chiara in Athens. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time, this is Onufrios Dovletis signing off from Not Another Greek History Podcast.